What is up, y'all? Man, I love recording podcasts on Fridays um, because it's the end of the week, and I just feel like I have so much more energy and I have so much more um, clarity, and I'm just excited. Like, I can focus all my efforts into recording the podcast, which is nice because I know after this, I have nothing else to do until Monday. So, um, one thing that I don't really know if I've shared. So, one, if you're watching it live right now on YouTube, we stream these on YouTube. So if you listen to the audio, you need to go check. If you only listen to the audio, you need to go check out our YouTube channel as well because I love the setup that we have. And in in our gym area is where we set up stuff for our podcast. It probably doesn't look like it if you're watching it right now, but the building that we're in is pretty much it is an old tobacco building. So they used to make tobacco here and make cigarettes. Um, so it is just like a very old industrial type of building. It's all old brick. It's awesome, but it gets so hot in here. So usually by the time I'm done recording, I'm like sweating, my face is flushed, and I'm hot. And I already am. It's hot in here today. But anyway, today's episode is a fun one, and it's one that I haven't really talked about this topic in a while. I've talked about it with people individually when they ask questions, or whenever I encounter new people. But it's not something that I've recorded a podcast on. I don't think ever on this channel. So I wanted to do that today. So you can tell by the title. This is essentially answering questions, giving tips, or maybe telling a beginner runner things that I wish I knew. Tips for beginner runners, essentially, is what this is. Because when I first started running, I didn't realize I had so many questions, but I was so naive at the time, which looking back now probably is better that it was that way. I kind of just trial and errored everything and just did something until I felt like it wasn't working, or until I pushed myself too hard, or somebody reached out and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Or, "Hey, maybe try this instead." So I want that episode. I want today's episode to kind of be that for you. Be those people that reached out to me and were questioning, "Hey, what are you doing?" Or, "Hey, try this. This might be better for you." That's what I want to be for you today as you listen to this. And this is pretty if you've been running, if you have any running experience, like maybe this is obvious to you, but I still think that um like hearing this and understanding this and thinking about it again like intentionally is always a nice refresher, because as I was writing stuff down, I'm like, yeah, I need to focus more on like my heart rate training again because I realized how much it helped me when I was doing it in the past. So let's just dive right in. I'm going to cover some of the things first that maybe are a little more obvious, but I'm going to help give you some resources and some things that can maybe help make the process shorter for you to achieve this or to get what you need. So first is get some decent running shoes. This is obvious, but I think a lot of times when people start running, they get shin splints. Like that's very common when you first start running. If you don't have a decent pair of shoes, or maybe your feet hurt, your hips hurt, and that can be attributed to a lot of things. But a lot of times, I mean, and the easiest thing when you first start running is to just get a decent pair of running shoes, and you don't need anything crazy or expensive. Now, obviously, your best case is going to be going to a local running store, getting your feet looked at, getting a gait analysis where they watch you run like on a treadmill or run outside, and they can see if you land more on the front of your foot, if you land more like on your heel, or you heel striking, and they can look at the shape of your feet and they can give you a shoe suggestion that is best fitted for your feet because everybody's foot is different. So I'm not going to give you a specific shoe that is like, yep, this is the end all be all type of shoe. I'll tell you the shoes that I started in, that I ran in, that were good for me and are still good for me. But I will say, as you run more and your running economy and your gait changes, you might start running a little bit differently, and shoes that worked good for you in the beginning may not work as well for you later on, which is kind of what has happened to me a little bit. But mostly the shoes that I first started running in that I kind of bought blindly without ever wearing them before have been great for me. So yeah, you can go to a running store if you have the financial capacity for it. That is obviously your best bet because they're professionals that can look at your form. They can look at the shape of your feet, and they can help find something that's going to be most comfortable for you. Um, but you also don't have to do that. You can go to websites, which this is the route that I took. You can go to websites. My favorite is runningwarehouse.com because they have all brands of running, and a lot of times they have really great deals, a lot of clearance items. But you can go to Running Warehouse and you can just kind of browse through the website and look for different shoes, and you can filter it based on road running, trail running. You want something. You want like a neutral shoe. You want something that helps with stability. One with a lot of cushion. One that's fast. I mean, you can filter it by everything. And so that's what I did. So the first pair of shoes that I ever got, and my wife actually got these for me for, I think it was a birthday present, were the Hoka Rincons. So the brand Hoka, most people probably have heard that. I know they're big, like in healthcare field for like comfort shoes. But Hoka makes a shoe called Rincon, and they are amazing. They have a ton of a ton of cushion. They're super light. Like when you look at the shoe, they look really bulky. When you pick them up, they're extremely light. I still wear the Rincon. Of course, when I first started running, it was just the Hoka Rincon. And now they have like the fourth version of it or something. So any version of the Rincon, I've ran in versions 1, 2, and 3, and they all feel very, very comfortable, very good, very light, and great for a beginner runner shoe. In my opinion, worked good on my feet. Another good one is Hoka Cliftons. Cliftons are awesome. Kind of similar to Rincon, but a little bit more cushion, more stability, and a little bit heavier. And then something that's a little bit faster but has a lot of cushion is the Saucony Endorphin Speed. And that's a great shoe. I mean, there are a ton of great shoes. Nike has amazing running shoes now too, for road running. These are all road running shoes that I'm referencing. But Nike makes my favorite trail shoe. Hoka makes amazing trail shoes. So really just do your research, ask people questions, pick people's brains, and just see maybe what shoes they've liked. And that's what I would suggest. But again, going to a running store obviously is your best bet if you have that ability to do that. Otherwise, go to a website like Running Warehouse, get a decent shoe, something that's going to be comfortable, that's not going to you don't want an old shoe with no cushion on it, uh, that's got holes in it, because that's going to hurt your feet. And running impacts multiple parts of your body, your hips, obviously your legs. I mean, even your back, your lower back, your glutes area. So getting a decent pair of shoes that are comfortable, that are good for your feet, is going to go really, really far. And the good thing about running shoes too is, I mean, I would say on average 200 to 300 miles is what you can get out of each pair of shoe. Now I've gotten 400 to 500 out of some shoes. But yeah, so just invest in a comfortable or a decent running shoe. Number 2, don't crush yourself on each run. So running is already hard, especially whenever you first begin. So if you're going out and you're putting out a crazy hard effort every time you run, or you're sprinting every run, it's going to make it even harder on you and on your body, and it's going to make it even less enjoyable, because a lot of times when we first start running, we don't always enjoy it. We're like, this sucks. So if you're able to find a balance of pacing yourself and following this rule that's called, well, there's a couple rules here that I'm going to reference. One is, the rule of thumb, typically, if you do research, if you follow people that run a lot, they're going to say to follow the 80-20 rule. So 80% of your runs should be at an easy effort. And some people, their efforts are based off their heart rate or based off just how they feel. The example I'm going to suggest and I'm going to give is called the MAF 180, MAF 180, and it's based off heart rate. But 80% of your runs should be at an easy effort. And so if you're looking at heart rate training, that might be zone 2 of the heart rate zones. And then 20%, the other 20% of your run can be a hard effort or like a speed workout. So 80% of your runs need to be easy. And an easy way, if you don't have a watch or something to track your heart rate, an easy way to track what an easy run might feel like is to think that you should be able to have a conversation whenever you're running at an easy effort. So that's why I always suggest running with friends and holding a conversation while you're running, because if you can hold a conversation while you're running at an easy enough pace that is not crushing you, that's not crazy hard. If you can talk to somebody while you're running, most likely you're running at an easy enough effort, that's going to help build your aerobic capacity, that's going to help you be able to run further, run for a longer amount of time without getting as tired, and your paces are going to increase um, at that effort. So what maybe you're running a 10-minute 30-second mile right now, and 2 months from now, if you're following this effort rule, 80-20 rule, a month from now, that same effort that you were running at, that you're putting out a 10:30 pace, that same effort may now be a 9:30 or 9:45 pace. So that's why I like doing heart rate training. So I'll jump into this. Kind of goes with the don't crush yourself on each run. So it's called MAF 180. And essentially what it is, you take 180, and you subtract it by your age. So for me, it's 27, which is 153. And what you want to do, if you have a way to track your heart rate, is on those easy runs, you want your heart rate to stay below whatever that number is, that 180 minus whatever your age is. So for me, it's 153. So I know that my easy runs, I need to try and keep my heart rate below 153, because when I'm got it below 153, I'm in zone 2, which is considered an easy effort. And in that zone, or in that easy effort, my body is performing optimally, because I'm getting blood flow, I'm getting oxygen to my muscles, because my heart rate isn't crazy high. And so when you run at that effort multiple times, over and over and over, and you stay in that easy effort range, in that zone 2 range, your body's aerobic capacity is gonna improve, which goes back to what I said. The effort you're putting out now that's giving you a 10:30 pace, 2 months from now it might be a 9:30 or a 9:45 pace. So you're gonna get better. It's really difficult at first, because you feel like you're running way slower than what you're capable of, and it's because you are. And sometimes this means walking. If your heart rate shouldn't get above 153, and you're running what feels like the easiest you can run, and your heart rate is staying at that 153 mark, well, maybe you need to walk. And I think that is the hardest part when you start paying attention to heart rate, or paying attention to your efforts, is having to really pull back and really slow down. And I'll give an example of this happened to me when I first got really invested in running. And it was my first year. I was training for my first MS Run the US relay, which is a relay across America. So there were 21 runners, and I was one of the runners that covered a segment of the United States where I ran for 5 days straight. Um, and I ran 141 total miles, so about 30 miles a day. And when I was training for this, my coach at the time had reached out, because she was following me on Strava, which is an app that syncs to your smartwatches. You can upload workouts to that, not just running, but biking, strength training, kayaking, paddleboarding, everything, stair stepper, everything. She was following my Strava, and she noticed that all my runs, I was running at a faster pace than what she thought an easy run should be for me. And she also saw that my heart rate was relatively high. And so she reached out and said, "Hey, are you doing speed workouts during these runs?" And I was like, "No, I'm just running." And she was like, "Well, are all of your runs at this pace? Because it looks like, that's the trend. All of your runs are at this pace." And I was like, "Yeah, mostly." And she was like, "Well, you need to really focus on your heart rate and pull those paces down." And so at first we didn't start with necessarily heart rate, but really just making myself slow down just to get used to it, because that's really challenging at first, especially if all you've known is going out on a run and putting out 100% effort, or even 90% effort, and crushing yourself. And it's okay to have those runs, about that 20% of the time. But that is the first realization I had, where I first started realizing, and was told by somebody, that running slow is going to make you faster. And it sounds stupid whenever you hear that and you say it, but it goes back to what I said about your aerobic capacity is improving, and the blood flow you're getting to your muscles and the oxygen you're getting to your muscles are going to improve when you practice that lower effort training more often. So your body is going to recognize, okay, it's almost like building up like a tolerance to running, essentially. So when your body recognizes um, maybe you running at a easy effort, and you've been doing it for a month, your body is like, "Oh, I'm used to this. Now I can pick it up." So that effort is naturally getting faster and faster and faster. So it's a very patient game, but it's gonna over time you're gonna really see the benefits of it. So don't crush yourself on each run. Next up, this kind of ties into what I just said, and I already kind of covered it, so I'll just skim through it. But don't be afraid to walk, especially if you're paying attention to your heart rate, or if you feel like you're running and that effort is getting really hard. and you feel like that you're pushing yourself, stop and walk, just reset. I mean, I do this all the time whenever I'm running races. I'll just stop and reset if I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed, if I'm getting in my head a lot and I'm having like a mental low. I'll just stop, walk, reset, and just tell myself, "You're okay. This is fine." And you may have to do that on training runs sometimes. And next up, I'm going to go briefly on this because I want to touch on it again at the end just to kind of drive it home for you guys. But comparison is the thief of joy. And this is a very cliche statement, but it's so true in multiple areas of life, but running especially, and especially when you get on social media, things like Strava, like Instagram, even YouTube, and you're following other people that are running, that are training for something, and they're running at a faster pace than you are. And maybe they're running at a faster pace and you've been running longer than they have. Or and even if they haven't, it can be really easy to get sucked into that mindset of, I'm never going to be at that level. Well, your journey is not the same as their journey, just like mine isn't the same as yours. Yours isn't the same as mine. There's people that's been running longer than I have, that maybe their easy pace is slower than mine. And there's people that have been running for less time than I have, and their easy pace is slower. So everybody's body is different. That's why I think that if you want to improve, you really have to focus on training efforts and doing your research and just being intentional with your training, and not I mean, if you want to go out for a run for a workout, that's fine. But if you really want to improve, if you want to run faster, you want to build up your endurance, you have to be intentional with your training. So next up, this is another thing that was big for me once I figured this out. I felt like it significantly improved my training and my recovery, is foam rolling and stretching. And I think this is a huge, huge key for your success and your longevity in the sport and running. And even in the beginning too. Like if you can figure this stuff out early, man, you're going to be set up because you realize how helpful it is, and you're not ever really going to experience the full effects of a really, really tight body due to no stretching. And that's what I experienced. I was never foam rolling until about almost a year into when I first started running. I had no clue that it was even helpful or what it did. So I wrote down some stuff. But basically, foam rolling is just soft tissue work. So if you've ever foam rolled, if you never have, you'll experience it the first couple times. But when you get on a foam roller, you're rolling maybe your quads or your glutes or your hamstrings across this hard piece of foam, and you can feel it really. It almost like it hurts on your body. It's because you're doing soft tissue work on your body, almost as if like you're getting a massage, or you go to um, or maybe you go to like a physical therapist or a chiropractor. But it helps alleviate muscle tension essentially. So doing that is kind of breaking up that tension in your body, and it's can help with muscle longevity as well. So foam rolling before you run. Typically, the order that I do is foam roll and then some sort of dynamic stretching. So dynamic stretching is important to do before you run because it's getting your heart rate up a little bit, so you're kind of easing into an elevated heart rate. And then two, it's just helping your body recognize um, non-static movement. So static stretching would be like sitting on the floor, reaching and touching your toes, or pulling your foot up to your butt to stretch out your quad, things like that. But dynamic stretching is more so like high knees, butt kicks, jumping up and down, like jump rope, things like that. And this is going to warm your body up slowly, and it's going to slowly increase your heart rate. But then again, it's going to just warm your body up, and it's going to be way better than doing like static or stationary stretches. Because whenever you do, stationary stretches, it's not activating your body. Excuse me. It's not activating your body or your muscles as the same as a dynamic warm up is. Excuse me. Jeez, I'm coming down with like a weird sickness right now. Allergies mainly, so bear with me here. But dynamic stretching, foam rolling before you start running is going to be a huge help. And then whenever you're cooling down, when you're done running, doing that, the static stretching then, because then that is slowly cooling your body down. It's lowering your heart rate much slower, rather than just finishing your run and going on about your day. And so next, practice. And this one, really, you'll learn this as you go, but practice fueling and doing your research. And I kind of already touched on that anyway about doing your research, but practice fueling for these runs. Before, like what you eat before, what you eat during, and then what you eat after. So essentially, before you go on a run, as your miles increase, especially, you want to have more carbohydrates. You want to have more sodium. You want to make sure you have enough hydration, that you're getting enough water and electrolytes in. So just practicing and doing research on, and again, it goes back to like picking somebody's brain. It's like, hey, what do you eat before a long run, or what do you eat before you run? What do you eat during your runs? At what point do you eat during your runs? So I mean, everybody is different. So doing your research on that is going to be the most help for you. Because I don't specialize in nutrition when it comes to running, and everybody's body is different. And there's sports nutritionists that cover that stuff specifically. That can be a lot of help. So finding someone that you can lean on for that is going to be the most helpful, obviously. But just especially if you're signed up for a race, like practicing these things beforehand is going to be a huge help. Because if you go into a race, that's just an example. If you go into a race and you're thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to eat throughout the day. I'm going to have these gels. Well, if you've never practiced with them, you can't guarantee that your stomach's going to take, and that your body is going to hold that really well. Because a lot of times when you're running, you can have stomach issues. So practicing that stuff beforehand is extremely helpful. And that's one thing that I struggled with when I first started, was I didn't do enough practice with my nutrition strategy or with fueling myself during or before or after my runs. Like, what does your body take best? What does your stomach handle the best? So doing your research on that. There's a ton of running and endurance products now, from gels, from like electrolytes, endurance formulas. There's all types of stuff. So do your research on that and practice, practice, practice before you do a race, especially. So if you don't plan on racing, obviously that doesn't really apply to you as much, but nailing in and finding foods and nutrition that works best for your body and practicing that before you race is just huge. And it will take a lot of stress off of you the day of races, if that's what you decide to do in the future, to sign up for a race. Which leads right into our next thing, which is sign up for something. Because when you sign up for something, it's going to help with accountability, most importantly. And it gives you a sense of purpose and accomplishment, because when you sign up or you train for something, if you've ever done that, you know how special it is when you finish that, when you accomplish that. Whether it was a 5K, whether it was a CrossFit event, whether it was triathlon, anything. When you sign up for something, you train for it. It just gives you a sense of accomplishment and gets you really, really excited for what else you're capable of. So signing up for something, I think, is just amazing. And especially for beginners, a great site is runsignup.com. You can go on that website and you can filter in, or you can filter race searches based on where you're from, different parts of the country, race distance, time of the year. I mean, everything. So it's incredible. Run Sign Up is great, and that's where we have the Hot Rod Ultra sign up at. So if you're looking for a race, your first race, hotrodultra.com, or on Run Sign Up, you can just search Hot Rod Ultra. And then next, and this is something that I really want to hammer home, is cross training. So cross training is doing another form of training besides just running. And for me, I love to strength train. And there's always been like a weird kind of, stigma is not the right word, um, but maybe saying that strength training harms you while running, or you can't build muscle while you're running, that type of stuff. But I will say, from my experience, the best form of cross training you can do when you're running is strength training. So lifting weights, going to the gym, and it's provided me a lot of confidence, because your body, you're doing something other than just running. And so when you're able to do something outside of just running, like lifting weights, it builds confidence up. And along with that, and I will say, you don't need to do 5 to 6 days a week of strength training, depending on how many miles you're running per week. 2 to 4 days typically is gonna suffice just fine. I typically, depending, when I start hitting like my higher mileage weeks, I'm doing 2 to 3 days max most of the time, unless I'm have like a down week of miles. But when you strength train while you're running, it keeps your muscles and your bones strong. I mean, obviously, when you work out, when you lift weights, you're getting stronger, you're building muscle. So by doing that while you're running, that's only going to help you even more. The stronger your muscles are, the stronger your bones are, then that lowers the risk of injury, right? So it's an obvious concept that you should strength train, you should lift weights in some capacity while you work out. Now, you don't need to go in and max out every time you work out. And I'm not going to lay out necessarily lay out a plan for you, but there's multiple resources for that. There's a lot of people that have strength training for runners, workout programs for runners, or just general workout programs. But strength training while you're running is only going to help you be a stronger runner, improve your running economy, make your legs stronger, make your back stronger, make your core stronger. It's extremely helpful, and the benefits of lifting alone are great, and doing so while you're running is, again, it's just going to make you a stronger runner. It's going to help eliminate that risk of injury, or it's going to lower that risk of injury a lot more. Um, and lastly, I want to close with this, and this kind of goes back to what I said about the comparison as a thief of joy, is to take the pressure off yourself. Like, eliminate any expectations you have if you're just getting into running. It's already a scary task, and it's hard to even start in the first place because your first 8 to 10 runs probably are going to suck, and you're going to feel like you don't know what you're doing. But don't compare yourself to other people's journeys. And two, eliminate the expectation of how you think your running journey is going to look. Because again, the first 8 to 10 runs, maybe more, maybe less, depending on you, is gonna suck. And you're gonna feel like, okay, am I supposed to feel like this? Am I supposed to hurt? That's normal. And so as you start doing it more, your body is gonna recognize that feeling. Kind of like I said about building your tolerance for running. Like, your body is gonna start to recognize, okay, at mile 1 last time I was really hurting, but now I understand, like, that's normal. I'm gonna feel this way. So I'm just gonna maybe I can dial back the effort a little bit, but still keep going. So your mind and your body will start to connect a little bit and understand what you need in each respective moment of your run. And not comparing yourself to other people's journey is going to help you keep going, and it's going to really help you mentally and emotionally to not rid the joy of your running journey. So try to take the pressure off yourself. Try to have fun and be open minded. Like I said, when you eliminate how you think it's going to look for yourself because you've seen somebody else's journey, it just makes it that much harder and disappointing when it doesn't look like that. And I will say I was so naive in the beginning of my running journey that I will say I compare my paces to other people in some ways, but I was really able to kind of eliminate the expectation of how I was going to feel when I was going to reach this running distance, when I was going to run this fast of a mile or whatever it is. And I was really open minded, and I was able to enjoy my running journey and just learn as I went. And that's what I suggest to you, along with all this stuff. Just um, take into consideration everything that I mentioned, because it's only going to help you. Um, and just be open minded. Start out slow. Do your research. Don't try to go from 0 miles a week to 30 miles a week. Just slowly add maybe 10% of running mileage per week. Don't go anything crazy. And listen to your body. It's normal to be sore, but you don't want to run, obviously, if your body is completely taxed. The first little bit as you get started, you may need to run a day and then take a day or two rest, and then you run 2 days in a row, and then you take a day or two in between, and eventually you'll work your way up and you'll build that running tolerance. So I just came up with that term today, running tolerance. I think I'm going to start using that. So, but anyway, I want to wrap up there and just hit that home again. Take the pressure off yourself. Don't compare your journey to other people's. And I hope you found some use out of this. If you're watching, thanks for watching the stream. And if you're listening, sorry for my voice right now. It's going in and out. So thanks for listening for another episode, and I'll catch you next time.